committee assistant has sent out the minutes for January 27th, 29th. The chair would entertain a motion. Mr. Ranking Minority Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think I've seen minutes this great and since the last time she did minutes, and so I move the minutes as written. Don't do that.
Is there a second? Second from the Vice Chairman. Is there any discussion on these incredibly excellent minutes? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes for January 27th and January 29th signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The minutes are approved. Committee, our next order of business is action on two bills. I'd like to look at House Bill 2448 and House Bill 2493. Is that correct? Okay. Thought that was 53 for some reason. All right. The chair will entertain a motion on House Bill 2448. Mr. Vice Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we pass House Bill 2448 forward for consideration.
Is there a second? Second from Representative Sutton. Is there any discussion? Okay, I'm sorry. Before I do that, I always forget to do this. Mr. Revisor, would you talk to us about this bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this bill would require, deals with driver's licenses and would require that the licenses issued to non-citizens clearly reflect that, and it provides that any person who displays, there's an amendment that, do you want me to explain it?
We'll wait until we...
Okay. The bottom line is that it would require the driver's license, the face of the driver's license, to show that whether the person is a citizen or non-citizen.
Okay. Are there any questions for the revisor on the bill before we open discussion? Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I'm going to open the discussion with an amendment. And this is the same amendment that we passed out during the hearing, but if you don't mind passing it out again for anybody who didn't bring it with them, including me. Okay, committee, so as we discussed in the hearing, what this amendment does is two things. First, it says that if somebody shows up at a polling place with a non-citizen driver's license, the poll worker is required to give them a provisional ballot, and that ballot won't be counted until that individual proves that they are in fact a citizen of the United States. The second part of this amendment changes the orientation of the driver's license so that, similar to a minor's driver's license, it is vertical rather than horizontal, so as an additional kind of visual cue to that poll worker that this is a non-citizen driver's license. I make the motion to amend. Is there a second on the amendment? Second from Representative Hellwig. Is there any discussion? Mr. Vice Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In reading the initial testimony from the Secretary of State, who were the main proponents for the bill, the real gist of what they were trying to do, frankly, related to the barcode that's scanned by the electronic poll books, that, as far as trying to make this as important for voting purposes, but not necessarily, it was not otherwise, important for it to be so readily distinguishable. I mean, I guess, so I would be throwing out to the committee, I guess I do wonder if the original wording mostly is correct, just simply because the purpose of the bill is for voting purposes and nothing otherwise, and the barcode aspect of it is a key indicator that will be, accessible to the voting clerks when somebody presents themselves to cast a ballot. And so I have some kind of qualms about this, amendments.
Okay, and so if I could restate what I think I hear you saying, you would like to go back to the original language for marking it as a non-citizen ID in that it would just indicate, but it wouldn't be the vertical versus horizontal orientation or whatever.
Yeah, I think that the format, this is part of the
Discussing, right?
discussion about
Discussing,
the,
right.
we're just discussing the, the part in the amendment about requiring a vertical format, I think what would be potentially overkill, the part about saying it shall be readily distinguishable from licensed and issued to citizens. I mean, given that the purpose is just for voting purposes, I think that is maybe somewhat overkill, and those would be the parts I would be concerned about.
So I think what I hear you saying is you would strike the last two balloons in the amendment, and
Maybe the first.
well, the first one's just the description, and it also has the provisional ballot part. So you would strike the part about changing the orientation of the driver's license in the description, and then the bottom two balloons?
Yes, I think that's what we're looking at.
Is that a motion to amend the amendment?
Yes, I would make such a motion.
Okay, is there a second for that motion to amend the amendment? Okay, a second from Representative Berquist. Okay, is there any discussion on the motion from the Vice Chairman? Okay, would you like to close on your motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move my amendment to the amendment.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Is there, okay, you've heard the motion. All those in favor of the motion by the Vice Chairman signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay? No. Okay, the ayes appear to have it. Representative Simmons and Representative Mosley and Representative Meyer would like, and the ranking minority member would like their no recorded. Okay, we are back on the amendment as amended. Is there any further discussion on the amendment, Mr. Ranking Minority Member? On the amendment as amended, because we voted to amend the amendment. Now we're back on the amendment as amended. That's a lot of amendment in one sentence.
Yeah, I do have one question.
Mr. Ranking Minority Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have the one question on the second balloon. Any person who displays a driver's license listing such person as a non-citizen at a polling place shall be given a provisional ballot for voting purposes. I believe I understand the contention or the underlying message, but can you explain why, if they come in there as a non-citizen, why are we giving them a provisional ballot?
I mean, obviously, if the voter doesn't know that non-citizens can't vote and they're told, hey, you're a non-citizen, you can't vote, and they just walk out, they wouldn't get a provisional ballot. The intent is if that voter still wants to vote, they have to vote a provisional ballot and then cure that ballot at a later time. That was intended to be in the original bill, but it was not included. Okay, Representative Mosley.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. When is this bill supposed to, like, if it goes into law, when is it supposed to take place?
I believe it would take place on July 1st.
So we're gonna have, so my driver's license doesn't expire until 2030. So how would a voter whose driver's license isn't expired until 2030 be impacted by this bill?
So this says nothing about everybody having to go get a new license. So this would, as people go to get their new license, the new license would indicate their citizenship status.
I have a second question for you. So then what is the training mechanism for poll workers? Wouldn't this be kind of confusing if half the people, so I'm a 2030, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of folks, if they look at their ID cards, what is the education mechanism that this bill has in place to make sure poll workers understand the difference between these two?
So we're on the amendment right now?
You're talking about amendment? Okay.
Okay, we're on the amendment. I'll go ahead and answer the question just in the interest of time. But the state does not train poll workers. The clerks and election officers in each county train the poll workers. It would be incumbent on the Secretary of State's office to make sure the clerks knew the change of law, and then they would have to train the poll workers. Are there any other questions on the amendment? Representative Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding new Section 1, any person who displays a driver's license listing such person as a non-citizen at a polling place shall be given a provisional ballot for voting purposes. If the individual Is this not having someone commit a crime if you give them a provisional ballot, if we've established that is a crime to vote as a non-citizen?
Well, they're not voting if their vote isn't counted. And so if they believe that they are eligible to vote, like say their driver's license says non-citizen, but they've since been naturalized, since they got the driver's license, they can vote the provisional ballot. Do you have any further discussion, Representative?
Well, I do. I'm confused about this because that would suggest that voting as a non-citizen, if the vote doesn't count, is not a crime. And I have understood through this committee that even attempting to vote as a non-citizen would be a crime. So that's my thought process here is.
Okay. Is there any other discussion?
Well, it's a question.
I don't have an answer for you because I disagree with the question. Is there any other discussion on the bill? Or the amendment? Representative Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand that maybe you disagree with the question, but I think it's a very legitimate question, and I have concerns about it as well, and I would like an answer on that if that's possible.
Okay, if you disagree with my analysis, you're free to vote against the amendment and vote against the bill. Representative Meyer, I disagree with the premise of the question.
Oh.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Representative Williams, did you have a question? Okay. Yes.
Okay, I think that Representative Simmons may have a point here on new section 1. If you look at the plain language, any person who displays a driver's license listing such person as a non-citizen at a polling place shall be given a provisional ballot for voting purposes. But I think, and I understand what the intent is, but I think it would be upon request if such person believed that they are a qualified voter.
So would it alleviate your concerns if we were to amend new section 1 to add for voting purposes if the individual still wishes to vote?
Something to the effect upon request if such person believes they are a qualified elector.
Okay, so the amendment I've been handed by, or the proposed language I've been handed by the reviser finishes that sentence by saying if the person claims to be a citizen. Okay. Would that be a motion to amend the amendment again?
Yes, I make a motion to amend the amendment.
Okay, is there a second? Yes. Second from a assertive and enthusiastic second from Representative James. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing no discussion, Representative Williams, you wish to close on your motion?
Yes, sir, I close.
Okay, committee, you've heard the motion. Is all those in favor signify by saying aye? Aye. All opposed, no? No. Okay, the ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Okay, so we are back on the amendment as amended twice. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay? Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion carries. Okay, we are back on the bill. Is there any further discussion on the bill as amended? Representative Mosley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for either research or the reviser. How much does it cost to write legislation for like a bill like this? What is the average cost for that?
$1,000. I'm not, I can find out for you. I don't know.
I would like an answer out loud also. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ranking Minority Member.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you for that. In reference to the bill, there are so many questions about it. For example, if someone comes in and does not show their driver's license but shows another alternative ID, it doesn't correct the issue that the Secretary of State is asking to correct, in which we can modify, we can actually see if the person's a citizen or not. And so this then just becomes a bill that just leads a very slippery slope down to a negative relationship with any agency outside of the Secretary of State's, because the Secretary of State was just staying in their lane with that, and I respect that. I would just encourage us to not pass this bill because of the too many ramifications with passing it. Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, seeing no further discussion, Mr. Vice Chairman, would you like to renew your motion as amended?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that we pass House Bill 2448 as amended favorably.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Representatives Mosley, Meyer, Simmons, and the ranking minority member wish to have their votes recorded. All right, committee, we have one other bill that I'd like to work before we get to the hearing, and that is House Bill 2493. Mr. Revisor, could you give us a rundown?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this deals with advanced voting ballots and either the envelope or the statement that would accompany them. If the statement on the form prescribed by the Secretary shall contain a sworn statement, the person transmitting or delivering is a qualified elector, and it adds the requirement that the identification number of the person, driver's license or non-driver's identification card be listed on either the envelope or the paper that follows the ballot.
And, the chair will entertain, or first of all, are there any questions for the revisor on this, what the bill says? All right, seeing no questions, the chair will entertain a motion on House Bill 2493. Mr. Vice Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we pass out House Bill 2493 favorably for passage.
Is there a second? Second from Representative Sutton. All right, is there any discussion on the bill? Mr. Ranking Minority Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just curious, since we had the hearing, has anybody stepped forward as offering a proponent testimony in reference to this bill?
We've already had a hearing, and you can't submit testimony after the hearing.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a follow-up, there is no proponent for this bill.
We'll find out on the floor, or we'll find out right now when we vote on it.
All right.
All right, is there any other discussion on House Bill 2493? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Vice Chairman, will you renew your motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that we pass House Bill 2493 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion from the Vice Chairman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Representative Simmons, Meyer, Mosley, and the ranking minority member wish to have their votes recorded, and they will be. All right, those are the only two bills I'd like to work today. Before we get into the next order of business, which is hearings, I would like to say a couple things about the rules. The committee assistant has given each of you a copy of the current rules as they are written, and I would like to highlight the number 4, 5, and 6. So number 4, the chair reserves the right to limit testimony that is cumulative in nature and may limit that testimony. And I will say that the very heated hearing that we had the other day, some of the folks that frequently appear before this committee as opponents, I believe were disrespectful to members and disrespectful to the bringers of the bill. And if that occurs again, I may exercise rule number 4 and limit requiring all the opponents to get together and figure out who's talking for all of them, because that's unacceptable. If you were dealt with in that way, you would be upset, and I think the committee members who were upset were rightly so. The next rule I'd like to highlight is number 5, which says committee members shall not address conferees unless and until permission is granted by the chair. When you're recognized, this is to all the committee members, shotgun blast, nobody in particular. When you're recognized to ask a question, you will ask one question and you will wait for the conferee to answer. You will not interrupt the conferee while he answers. And then if you wish to ask a subsequent question, you will ask the chair and wait to be acknowledged by the chair, and the chair reserves the right to limit the number of questions that you can ask, which is rule number 6. And so in order that all of the members of the committee have the ability to ask a question and we don't go till 6 o'clock every night, I am going to vigorously exercise that rule. So I ask that everybody be respectful, figure out what you're going to ask in advance. The other thing I would say is that hearings are for questions of the conferees. And if you look at Mason's rules, which always supersedes, or wherever there isn't a specific rule, we refer to Mason's. Mason says that questions are not to make speeches, are not debate tools. Questions are to elicit information from the conferees. And if I feel that we are straying from the subject of the bill and understanding the conferee's perspective on the bill, I will end that committee person's questions. Speeches are never appropriate from committee members during hearings. If you want to talk about the bill and talk about your feelings on the bill, talk about your sentiments on the bill, you do it when we work the bill, not when we are in hearings. Hearings are about hearing from the conferees. And if there's any questions on that, I would be happy to talk to folks offline about it, but right now we need to get into the hearings. Our first bill is House Bill 2503, and I'm opening the hearing on that bill, and I'd ask the reviser to give us a rundown.
Mike Heim with the Reviser of Statutes Office. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is actually a repealer bill. The gist of the bill are the sections that are repealed, which it repeals the Mail Ballot Election Act. There are 25 sections in the bill. I can go through them, but the bottom line is they delete mail ballot election references in each of those 25 sections. So I can continue or I can be quiet.
Okay, are there any questions of the reviser on the bill? I have a question, taking chair's prerogative, because I know I'm going to hear it 50 times when we get into questions. Hopefully not 50 times, because everybody's getting one question. This does not end mail-in voting. This only ends a mail-only election. Is that correct?
That's correct. The mail ballot election law provides basically a vehicle for primarily a question submitted type election where you're voting on a tax increase, you're voting on a bond issue, there's a protest petition, and so on. And it's been on the books since 1983. There's a series of things that it allows there to be a mail ballot election for. So,
okay, Mr. Ranking Minority Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mike. I'm just curious, is there a complementary bill on the Senate side, or is this the only one that you're aware of that will be addressing this issue?
I don't know of a Senate bill.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Heim, so the Mail Ballot Election Act, so currently, did we not pass a bill last year that all elections have to be either, first Tuesday of March or August or November? Is that still the case, or can mail ballots be held at other?
The special election, I think, would have to conform to what was passed last year.
Okay, okay. So the rules, I mean, I know these are kind of rare. I know, like, when I was driving up from Hutchinson on Monday, I was listening to a Salina radio station, and they're having a mail-in ballot for about pit bulls, some, legislation or local ordinance, restricting pit bulls or something. It's a citizen petition ballot, and it's going to happen, I think, in February. I don't think it's actually going to be in March. But it has to be, what's kind of the basic parameters of what currently can be an all-mail ballot?
It would call basically for a special election. The ballot, the process is Secretary of State has to approve a plan for the conduct of the election. And the election has to be nonpartisan. It has to be basically can't deal with an election of a candidate, although there is a provision in a couple of laws dealing with candidates. But to my knowledge, it would have to be in line with what was passed last year in terms of the limitation on when you could have the election.
All right, are there any more questions about the bill and the contents of the bill? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to thank you, Mr. Reviser. I'm going to open proponent testimony on House Bill 2503, and our first conferee is Representative Rivas. Welcome to the committee, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, Ranking Minority Member, and everyone else. Nice to be here. So let's start this off with, so the legislature has a duty to ensure elections are fair, that everyone has access to vote, they're secure, and the purpose behind the original legislation was to allow exclusively mail-in only elections that had good intentions. The reality is that it discouraged voter participation, it's increased cost, the post office has no accountability, and there's inadequate verifiable voter ID. So this, I want to emphasize, this is mail-in, exclusively mail-in ballot elections only. Overseas ballots, military ballots, advanced ballots, all those, that all still works just fine. If you have a mail-in component to your election, you have to have a polling place. There's got to be a way so somebody can vote in person. So typically, mail-in ballot elections are also more costly, and those costs are borne ultimately by the taxpayers. Typically, these are school districts or cities that run an election, so we're paying more to do these kind of elections. Another thing is voter records are very inaccurate. There was a hearing in October. There's more people registered to vote 65 and older than there are in Kansas population, so there's a lot of bad voter lists out there, and they're not being cleaned up very well. So what happens is these mail-in ballots go out, and you don't know who fills it out and sends it in. I know, give you an example, we had a problem with that issue and with the post office in Atchison. We had a 409 school district had an election, and they did a mail-in ballot. They mailed them all out one day, and the next day, a ton of them, hundreds of them, came back to the county clerk's office because the format they did on the ballot, it's like a postcard. It looks like junk mail. A lot of people threw them away. The guy was in the county clerk's office. There were boxes of ballots, and they were scrambling to find a way to get these back out. And ultimately, they found a way to get a lot of them mailed back out, but a lot of voters never got a chance to vote. There was no option for a in-person place to vote, a polling place. And the bond issue had a very small percent turnout. I don't want to quote a number, but it was under 10%. Passed a $25 million bond. So that was kind of the impetus of like, what's going on here? This does not work. Besides the fact that they're poorly designed, they also, the way the postage is done on them, the window of time to get these back in, a lot of them came in after the deadline. They'd been canceled, actually, and they were actually, I don't know where that post office, they were stuck in the lost letter office or something. But so the final thing is I want to point out is the U.S. Post Office has a new rule. They passed it, I think it was in August or so, or October. But anyway, it was into effect in December. And I got a link to that in my testimony. In the Federal Register, there's now the U.S. Postal Service no longer assures a postmark at all. If there is a postmark, they can do it within 2 days. And if the only way to guarantee getting a postmark is to take it into the window at the post office and get a hand stamp, hand cancel. So with those issues and trying to be fair about when things get mailed, I just felt like it's at this point that we probably need to get away from these mail-in, exclusively mail-in ballot elections. So that's the reason for the bill, and that's how this came about.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Before you step down, is there anybody else wishing to testify as a proponent on this bill? Okay, seeing none, you're the only one I had listed as testifying. We'll move to questions. And the first question is from Representative Mosley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the postmarking. Didn't the 3-day grace period bill make it where the postmark does not matter? It needs to be there on Election Day.
All I know is there's no guarantee they'll even do a postmark. That's part of the register.
May I? So we voted last year to get rid of the 3-day grace period, saying that your ballot needs to be in on election day. So that doesn't matter if your ballot, your postmarking does not matter. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the proponent? Mr. Vice Chairman.
Yes, thanks, Representative Rivas. Do you have any notion how many mail-in ballot elections there are in Kansas? I mean, I don't know if you had any, outside of, your situation in Atchison, how often does this happen? Do you know?
Well, I don't have a number. I know that it also applies to sometimes like little electric cooperatives or utility companies will do this sometimes as co-ops and also like extension councils. I know in our county, the extension council has done the mail-in, and now what they'll do is they'll have a couple of places volunteers just man a booth and they elect their council. So as to how many, I know they're very, very frequently done with bond issues.
So I have phoned a friend, and a reliable source tells me that the 3-day grace period did not apply to mail-in only elections for ballot issues. So that the 3-day grace period never applied. So since somebody asked the question, are there any other questions for the conferee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much for your testimony and your time.
Thank you. I need to go to my committee, so I'll probably let
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. All right. I have no one listed as wishing to speak as neutral on this bill. Is there anybody wishing to speak as a neutral conferee? Seeing none, we'll move to opponents. I have one opponent listed, Mr. Rick Pifo. Welcome to the committee, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Rick Pifo. I'm the Harvey County Clerk and Chair of the Elections Committee for the Kansas County Clerks and Election Officials Association. We're opposing this just because, mostly because we think it's a good option. It's very limited in its usage, but it is a good option for districts, entities that want to have a question-only election. No candidates are allowed on the ballot. It was said that they cost more. There are some cases it costs more because we're paying the postage both ways. But in many cases, it costs less. But in my experience, the turnout is always higher for a mail ballot election than a traditional polling place election for a special question like a bond. I put in here that it's been my experience that if we do a traditional polling place election for a bond issue, it depends on how many dollars you're talking about and how much voter engagement has been out there. But normally you're going to get a 20 to 30%. With a mail ballot, you're going to get a 50 to 60%. So sometimes it's worth it for those districts to pay a little more to get more voters. Like I said, it depends on the actual jurisdiction and how many polling places you have to open, how many poll sites. And we don't see it as a security issue. We have a lot of rules and regulations on how we conduct these. I think that's my main points. I stand for questions when appropriate.
Okay, if you might stand there, is there anybody else wishing to testify as an opponent? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to questions. And the reviser has a question. I will allow him to ask it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I misstated that is this considered a special election or not? And so is it covered by the limitation on when these mail ballots can go out or not?
Yes and no. The bill to put all special elections on March the 3rd did not really cover all special elections. It only covers special elections that specifically are pointed to that act, like 10-120, the bond law. It affects those, but you have these ones like they talked about in Salina, where it's done by petition. Those laws say that you have to have this election within so many days after filing the petition. So it doesn't really restrict all special elections to only being on March the 3rd. I got one other point that I forgot to say, if I can. If this bill was to move forward, I noticed a a technical issue, I think. It's supposed to repeal the Mail Ballot Act, which is 431 through 440, but specifically left out are 432 and 433. So they would become orphans, I guess. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the conferee, Representative Meyer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming here today. I was looking at the fiscal note. I noticed that what we received from the Division of the Budget noted that the Kansas Association of Counties could not estimate a fiscal effect. Could you give me a guesstimate?
That would be really hard to do because, like I said, it depends on the jurisdiction that's doing the election as to whether this would actually cost them more money. I mean, it's an option for them. So when they want to do an election, they call me and say, what is the estimate for mail ballot, polling place, and then that board makes the decision.
So if, following on, I'll let you ask her the question in a second, following on her question, has it ever been the case that a municipality or a school district has asked you which is more expensive, and it's turned out that a mail-in only election was cheaper than doing in person?
Yes.
Okay, how frequent, I mean, is it usually?
So it really depends on the jurisdiction, how many polling places.
I'm shocked by that, because having to mail a ballot to every single registered voter seems like it would be way more expensive than opening up a polling place.
We pay postage both ways, but polling places, the cost of polling places, all the poll workers. So administratively, actually, mail ballot elections are easier for us as staff.
Hey, Representative Meyer, did you have an additional question?
Actually, Mr. Chair, that was the question you asked was very much in line with what I was going to ask, so thank you.
I read your mind. Are there any other questions? Mr. Ranking Minority Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Pifo, thank you again for testifying and bringing your information. The bill is, the amendment of the bill is concerning because of it takes away innovation, and that's where my question is wrapped around. Have you had discussions? There's 8 states that's nothing but mail-in ballots only. You know, that's how they handle their elections. What discussions have your association had about the innovation or the possibility that we could gain from mail-in ballots?
There's been lots of discussions. It's never been put in our platform as to having a majority of the clerks in favor of really pushing for mail ballot elections. And I don't think there's a real flavor in the legislature to do that. So, but there are states that do all mail ballot elections, and we're talking unsolicited. They're not asking for a ballot. We're just mailing it to them.
And the follow-up, Mr. Chair, is, so let's talk 20 years from now. What does elections look like? You have to have discussions as far as the advancements of elections and what are modernized, innovative ways of approaching, I mean, what does the future look like? And you have to have had those discussions. Dream a dream.
If I had a crystal ball, I would, I could probably make a lot of money, but.
But there's not been any like projections as far as the direction that voting is going?
Our duties are mostly based on federal and state laws, so we have to deal with the constraints that we have based on our equipment and technology capabilities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there any other questions for the conferee? Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Mr. Pifo, for being here. So I'm still want to explore a little bit the changes that we made last year where all of you have, your March, you have August, you have November. So the only possible time you could have would be in March. Is that correct? Or there's no exception to that, is there?
There are lots of exceptions.
Are there?
I said, like the one that they were talking about in Salina, that's a protest petition. It's happening in February.
I see.
It's happening like right now. So that change to March the 3rd does not affect all special elections. And this is just an option. Why does it need to be repealed, I guess, if it's just an option for jurisdictions?
If I could, my memory is, I mean, I've seen this happen maybe once or twice in Reno County. I mean, but don't the people who want to have it as a mail-in ballot, if it's a school district or a township or whatever, that they have to pay for it. Is that, there's some sort of, I mean, they have to pay one way or the other. And if they want it as a mail ballot, that's the one they have to pay for? They have to,
They'd have to pay either way.
oh, okay, whether, either, I see, okay. So it doesn't matter there, it's just strictly just the fact that they're asking for the election. And my other question would be, in Harvey County, I mean, you've been there, what, 10 or 20 years, roughly?
10, 11 years as county clerk.
How often do you have, I mean, mail-in ballot elections, how often does that happen?
We've done 4, I think, in my term. Harvey County was actually one of the first counties to do a mail ballot election once this act was passed. Not under my term, but.
All right, I'm going to allow about 5 more minutes of questions here, and I got a couple of my own. Representative Bergquist, Representative Mosley, and then I'm going to wrap it. I'm going to bring in the rear, as they say.
Just a couple of questions. In the ballots we're talking about are generally, and is this so, are generally question ballots, not multiple choice. They're yes or no on a certain question.
Correct.
And, or in the case of, we've used them in our city for if there was a law required or requested by the people and the council refused to take it. If a petition came, then a petition election would happen and the people would decide by ballot.
Correct. It still would normally be a yes or no.
Right. Thank you.
Representative Mosley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to have some clarity on the rules that we just discussed, because the vice chair asked like 5 questions in the rules. So I just want to make sure that I know how to move forward. So I want clarity on the rules that were just discussed prior to this hearing.
Okay, he asked, can I continue? And I nodded, and he continued. Okay, Mr. Pifo, could I ask you to put your Harvey County clerk hat on instead of your KCC EOA hat? Sure. Okay, so how many dead people are on your voter rolls?
I don't know. I mean, we actively go through the voter rolls and read obituaries. So, I mean,
But do you suspect that you didn't catch everyone?
I would suspect that there are some, yeah.
Okay, so we had a conferee and the proponent referred to this in his testimony. We had a special, interim committee where a conferee came in and showed us the data that there are more people 65 or older who are registered to vote in the state of Kansas than there are humans alive 65 years or older in the state of Kansas. If you do a mail-in only election, a ballot is being mailed to each one of those dead people, is it not?
Potentially. I mean, we're only mailing to active, so if we had some other information and we started the confirmation mailing process, which is all laid out in statute, then they would not be mailed a ballot. So if they've been made inactive, they're not mailed a ballot. And of course, if they're canceled, they're not mailed a ballot.
But you can't even start that process until they've missed 2 even-year elections. So if they died a year ago, they haven't gotten that mailing and been put on the inactive list yet, so they would get a ballot, correct? If you didn't catch that they had died.
Unless a mail piece came back, and that is another, mail ballot elections actually help clean up the list because we're mailing to every active voter. So we get back the undeliverables.
So it's a good,
starts the confirmation
so it's a good thing to mail a ballot to a dead person.
I'm not saying that.
Okay, I wouldn't say it either. Okay, all right. Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you to all the conferees, and we are going to close the hearing on HB 2503 and move to the hearing on HB 2453. Could you please give us a rundown of that bill, sir?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I need to say this title of this bill needs correction, and I've got a balloon to correct the title. The bill itself is correct, but the title refers to an earlier version of the bill, but the bottom line is that this bill changes some dates for various things relating to ballots and so on, asking for an advanced ballot and so on. So the title, as it should read, would be, if you're going to apply for an advanced ballot, you have to file that application 14 days before the election. So it moves it back some to make sure that the mail would be there. It also provides that requiring the advanced voting in person would be by noon of the Sunday preceding the election. And it extends the time for transmitting of ballots to 22 days prior to the election. And for 23 days prior to the election day for voter registration. So you can register 23 days before the election. You can actually apply for your advanced ballot and so on 22 days prior to the election. There's lots of dates here that the bill deals with, but if you have questions, I can go through each section of the bill if you want, but I'm guessing you don't.
Okay, so are there any, I'm going to start with the first question for the reviser. This is both 2 days earlier beginning mail-in voting and 2 days earlier beginning early voting at the polling place potentially, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the reviser? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, sir. We'll move to proponent testimony, and our first conferee is Representative Pickert. Welcome to the committee, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. It's good to be here with you. I'm Sandy Pickert, State Representative for District 88, representing Southeast Wichita and Southwest Andover. So thanks for this opportunity to come and just share with you about this bill and how it even started. Last year, you may recall that we passed House Bill 2017, and that was the bill that took away the 3 days after Election Day for advanced ballots to arrive and be counted in the election office. I heard from several constituents about that, that they didn't support that bill because they felt like it was decreasing voter engagement by taking away those 3 days. So I thought about that. You know, I heard what they were saying, and I thought, what could we do about that to maybe change that? So I thought, why not add some days on the front end? So that started my thinking process. I reached out to some people that I knew that live in Kansas, but they work out of state, and they consistently use mail-in ballots, and talked to them about it, and they said, well, that would help them because some of them barely get the ballot. They mark it right away and send it back and hope it makes it in time. I also reached out to some election officers in 2 counties where there's a large population and 3 counties where there's smaller populations to see what they thought about these changes. So if we did something like this, well, currently, with a 20-day cycle from the day that that advanced ballots can be mailed out until Election Day, that ties us with Iowa as to being the shortest states, the states with the 2 states with the shortest voting cycle, okay, of 20 days. All right, so I'll just run through the changes that's proposed in this, this bill. One of them, the first one, is it extends the advanced voting period from 20 to 22 days by adding those 2 days on the front end. So advanced ballots would be mailed on Monday rather than Wednesday, 3 days before election. And if you think about that, if a ballot is mailed on Wednesday with some of the mail that goes out of state and comes back to Kansas, you know, they may not get their ballot by the end of the week. But if you move it to Monday, they're likely to get it by the weekend, and they could vote potentially right away in that week. Okay, the next one is voter registration will end 23 days before the election, which is a day before advance ballots go out. And I learned that has to happen. They have to be registered voters, of course, before they can request an advance ballot. Okay, this would be on Sunday. Now, some people think, well, why wouldn't it be Friday? Because election offices are open on Friday. They're not open on the weekend. Well, people can register online, so they could potentially register as late as Sunday. Okay. The next one is it allows adequate time for the election office to process a request and mail an advance ballot, and the voter to return the ballot by mail. So that was mentioned by the reviser, so applications for advance ballots would need to be submitted 14 days before election rather than the current 7 days, because 7 days really is not a very practical amount of time for the election office to process that request, mail it out, the voter get it, mark their ballot, and mail it back and get there by election day. So 14 days would allow adequate time for that. The next one is advanced voting in person would begin on Tuesday before the election unless an earlier date is designated by the county election officer, and will end no later than 12 noon on Sunday preceding the election. Currently, early in-person voting extends from Tuesday before the election to Friday before the election, and on Monday morning till noon. Well, and also if the county election officer opts, early in-person voting could occur on Saturday. I also talked to an election officer where they opt to start before Tuesday, like a couple weeks, 3 weeks before the election day to do early voting. So that's an option. So this proposes that the election officer could opt to do Sunday morning till noon if they wanted to, rather than Monday till noon. People that work during the week, if they needed to, you know, vote on a weekend, they'd have that option if they opted to have that. There'd be no early in-person voting on Monday morning as it is now. The reason for that is in the larger populated counties, it's a scramble for them to prepare everything that they need to. If they have to wait till noon on Monday, they upload information to iPads and have all of the supplies and everything for the polling people to come pick up everything that they need and have them before the election office closes on Monday. Well, if you have 100+ polling sites, that's a lot of craziness going on, scrambling to get that done. So that's why we're considering that. Okay, and then
Representative, I'm going to need you to wrap up because we've got three other
I got one more.
So please
Okay.
conclude.
And the last one is deadline for receipt by mail of advance ballots shall be at the end of Election Day rather than the current 7 p.m. So I'll stand for, it says 7 p.m. in the law now, but the end of Election Day. For instance, if there's a long line and people are, you know, and they're allowing it to go after 7. So, yeah. And I'll be happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
If you could just stay there. Is there anyone else wishing to speak as a proponent? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to questions. Ranking Minority Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for testifying. It's always intimidating as a fellow representative to testify in front of peers, and you did fine. I appreciate it. But I do need a point of clarification, and I didn't see or hear why. On page 9 of the bill, On page 9 of the bill, we have struck sub F, procedures for canvassing and challenging advanced voting ballots received by mail after the closing of the polls pursuant. Why is that? Why was that taken out?
You know, I don't know.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I was having the same conversation here with the revisor. All right, are there any other questions for the proponent, Representative Mosley?
Representative Pickett, what was it, Pickett?
Pickert.
Oh, Pickert, I have my apologies. For the deadline for voter registration to be on Sunday, and mail isn't delivered on Sunday, and I turn in and I mail a paper application to my county clerk, that gets there on Monday, which is a mail day, how's that impacted? So you wouldn't be able to vote that year?
Representative, I'm going to ask that we hold that question for the conferees that actually execute elections. So hold that question because Representative Pickert probably
not
has
This is her
not
bill, so
processed the
sorry.
registration
By any stretch.
in her life, probably.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the proponent? Okay, Representative Brunk.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I know you're wanting to move on or need to. Would you mind restating one of the last positions that you had was no early voting on Monday before elections? That Monday, would you state the reasoning for that?
Because in the counties that have a high population,
Wichita?
Sedgwick County, Johnson County, they have to prepare iPads, download information to iPads, and gather the other equipment and supplies that the polls need. I know in Sedgwick County there's 101 polling places. They are scrambling like crazy to get all that done and to hand those out, get all that, before the election office closes at 5 o'clock. So it really puts a burden on the staff to get that all ready for election day.
So then are you moving that advanced voting then up a day to compensate for that?
They could do it, they could opt to have their office open on Sunday morning.
That was the part that I missed. Okay. So that's an opt-in? Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions for the conferee? Okay, seeing none, we'll thank you very much for your testimony. We'll move on to neutral testimony, and our first conferee is Mr. Clay Barker. We're running up on time, so I'm going to ask that the subsequent conferees try to keep it to 3 minutes so that we have time to ask plenty of questions. Go ahead, please.
All right, Mr. Chair, I started out my testimony with just a reminder that the legislature has plenary authority to change the procedures, conditions, and deadlines for advanced voting to meet election needs, technology changes, demographic shifts, and it's been doing that for a century. So you have complete authority to tinker with the timeline. Tinker's the right word for it. On the question about the rules and regs being struck out, there's 3 places in our statutes that still say the Secretary of State shall issue rules and regulations about the 3-day grace period, but since that no longer exists, those provisions need to be struck. I didn't realize they'd be in this bill, but we read this bill as really changing 3 or 4 things. 1, currently registration closes on the Tuesday, 3 weeks before the election. This would move it back to 23 days, which is actually the Saturday, 3 weeks before the election, although you could also read this possibly as the Sunday. The good part of that is it still preserves the Kansas procedure that the registration books close, then we mail out the ballots. Some states mail ballots out much earlier than that. It doesn't create any federal issues with the NVRA, which has a timeline. You can't close registration more than 30 days. The problem is you would lose 3 days of registration, and the question on the registration is electronically we look at the time it was sent. If it's in person, it's in person. If it's sent by mail, we still look at the postmark because it has to come through the mail system. If it's postmarked on the cutoff day, even if it arrives later, the registration goes. If there's no postmark, the voter gets 9 days. If it arrives 9 days after the cutoff, through the mail but with no postmark, the registration is valid. Second part is it moves when the ballots are mailed out 2 days earlier, from Wednesday to Monday. The good part is they get out earlier, and you could still do advance in-person voting a little earlier because that can start, doesn't have to start, on the day the ballots go out. Third provision is the deadline to accept mail ballot applications is moved from 7 days before the election to 14 days before the election. The good part is no one can claim they relied on sending an application in late and thinking they'd get a ballot and be able to return it. They'd have to get plenty of time to plan around it. The bad part is about 5% of the applications come in that 14 to 7 day window. So those people, whoever they are, for whatever reason, their applications would be rejected. The last part is moving the advance in person. Right now it says up till Monday before the election. Now it would be Sunday. The good part of that is for a county like Johnson, which I've experienced, and you have to picture this building, there was a line of cars going down the road of people wanting to drop off ballots or run inside and vote. It's a polling place. And there's a line of trucks trying to get loaded up with equipment and supplies, trying to move out on the street. And it's a traffic jam of immense proportions, even though they found ways to work around it. And this would avoid that. The problem is it has early in-person voting on a Sunday, which means the staff would have to come in on a Sunday, which they're not used to, and the public isn't used to core government functions being done on a Sunday. And with that, Mr. Chair, I hope I made the 3 minutes, and we'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
With 9 seconds to spare, thank you very much. I'm going to have all the neutral conferees testify, then we'll do questions. The next conferee is Mr. Rick Pifo.
Yeah, Rick Pifo again. We're neutral on this, but we have some technical issues, I guess. Moving the mail date from Wednesday to Monday, not an issue. Moving the registration day, and technically, it's the way you count the days. When this bill was amended, in one spot, the days were amended from 20 to 22. The other spot is amended from 20 to 23. Those days are the days that registration is excluded. So Sunday is included, is that 23rd day. That's why the date is Saturday, technically. Because nowhere does it say what the registration deadline is. And then, so with registration ending on a Saturday, does that basically compel us to be open on a Saturday for registration? We try to serve our voters, and in my case, the Tuesday deadline, I stay open, my office stays open until 7 p.m. We don't get very many registrants, but it's an option for them. And I know they can register online, but, and then the 14 days, that makes sense on the last day to apply for an advance by mail, just because of the turnaround, as was mentioned. The taking away voting on Monday, I think is an issue. In my county, we regularly have as many people vote on that half day on Monday from 8 to 12 as we have on any other day. So about 10% of our early voters vote on that Monday in that half day. So now would we be compelled to now open on Sunday for early voting? We're already open on that Saturday from 9 to 2. Now we'd be compelled to open on Sunday. Actually, the statute doesn't even allow me to open on Sunday. It says we can only be open on business days. So unless I call Sunday a business day, it allows for me to be open on the Saturday preceding the election, but there's no allowance actually for me to open on Sunday. So I think that's the basics of my testimony, and I'll gladly stand for questions when appropriate.
Okay, since you're up there, are there any other conferees wishing to speak as neutral on this bill? Okay, seeing none, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Pifo? Representative Mosley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may be an expert on this question. So mail isn't delivered on Sunday. If voter registration the deadline is on Sunday, and because of accessibility issues, I'm choosing to fill out a paper ballot, and that mail does not get delivered till Monday, would you have to be open on that Sunday for someone to be able to walk in and like hand in their registration? Or would that person not be able to vote, be disenfranchised?
If they mailed it, it's a postmark, as Mr. Barker said. We're a postmark, so if it's postmarked by a certain time and received within 9 days, we process it. Or within so many days, we process it.
Okay, and I think I heard Mr. Barker say if it doesn't have a postmark, you'll take them for 9 days.
Correct.
Yep, so postmark, no postmark. Okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. Pifo? Mr. Vice Chairman. You were so close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pifo, on the Monday issue, I was thinking in our change to taking ballots, at 7 p.m. on Election Day, did we not do away with the Monday? Is that not, in the next election cycle, that's going to happen automatically, or?
No, it was discussed to actually trade Monday for Saturday. And that was not
was never in the final
received
bill.
by our association members.
I see.
As an aside, everything that's in this bill was in the repeal of the 3-day grace period 2 years ago, but we were not able to override the veto. There was a compromise that blew up, and it ended up an orphan. So are there any other questions for Mr. Pifo? Okay, thank you, sir. I've got a couple questions for Mr. Barker, if I could. So the first thing, you said that a good number of mail ballot requests come in during that 14 to 7 day period that we will no longer be accepting mail ballot requests if this bill is passed. Do you think people, if we change the deadline and we put on the form to request a ballot that the deadline is different, they might adjust their behavior?
I believe they would, Mr. Chair. They'd either adjust their behavior by not requesting a mail ballot, or they would request it late, be told they can't get one, and they would come up with a different way of voting in person, advance, or
they just ask earlier, right? Okay. My other question was, you talked about the compelling Sunday voting. I'd ask, when you look at the language of the bill, I thought it was written so that Saturday and Sunday before the election is at the discretion of the clerk. Does your reading, do we need to fix something?
Mr. Chair, if you bear with me just a second.
It says no later than.
It said no later than 12 p.m. on Sunday, so it would have to be open on Sundays. So we read it, but I can reread that. And
the intent is that it's at the discretion of the clerk and the county that has to pay for that Saturday and Sunday of voting. So please take a look at the language. If we need to amend it, please let me know, because the intent is not to compel clerks to work on Sundays. So.
All right, Mr.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Representative Brunk, the ranking minority member, and then Representative Mosley?
Thank you. And so if I understand this correctly, we're talking about potentially at the discretion of the clerk being open on the Sunday prior to Election Day.
Correct.
And so is that only at the clerk's office where someone could come in, or would that be at a polling place?
It could, as long as advanced voting is available, which could be at different locations.
So those different locations, do you have any idea how many? I'm thinking about churches. So asking a church to be open on Sunday for a polling place might be problematic. If they're engaged in services, am I on the wrong track here? And so
Representative, and usually the statute originally said that the Monday morning voting had to be done at the county election office, and that was modified in the past. But if you have a polling place, you have a contract with them, and if a church says no polling on Sunday, then you can't use it as a polling place on Sunday.
Representative Brunk, are you about to ask another question?
No, I'm following rule number 4 on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. What I was about to say is that besides that is right now it's at the discretion of the clerk where they do early voting. I've been to talk to a lot of clerks. Most counties, they do early voting at the county courthouse. So, all right, Mr. Ranking Minority Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Clay, thanks again for always being here to answer questions. And the chair brought something up in his comments about the voter changing their behavior. And anytime that happens, I feel like there needs to be a transition of education. But then I look at your fiscal note, and the fiscal note doesn't deal with anything other than we're just going to update our training material. That seems a pretty significant change. So why is it not going to cost us anything to train these voters of what the rules are. And can you go a little bit more into how you would implement this, or how you would recommend the counties implement this, please?
Mr. Ranking Minority Member, I think the idea behind the fiscal note is we already do voter information and county staff training, so this would just change the subject of what's being trained, the substance, not add on too much additional cost to it. And the way we'd inform voters is either by putting information on envelopes, social media, matters like that, that just allow people to know some of the deadlines have changed. And a lot of these have not changed significantly, except perhaps the timeline for the application. That's an entire week change. Everything else is just 1 or 2 days.
I'm giving you that look like I have another question, but I'm good, thanks.
Okay. And I would tell the committee a couple things. First, well, let's have Representative Mosley ask her question, then I'll
Thank you,
rather than
Mr.
interrupt.
Chairman.
You're welcome.
It's always a pleasure to see you, Mr. Barker. My question for you is, I live in a county that does every single day of early voting. And the point of this bill is for us to increase turnout because someone wants to correct a vote that they made last year. My question for you is, how does making it where there's one less day of early voting does what the intent of the proponent of this bill? Because you said that on Sundays, it's up to discretion. And now Sundays potentially may not be an option for a lot of folks. So how does that increase turnout or increase people participating in the process?
Well, Representative, I'm not dodging the question. We weren't a proponent of the bill, so I can't understand all the mechanics behind it, but I think the provisions were intended to balance off, that you cut a little bit at one end and add some more at the other by adding 2, maybe 3 extra days of advanced voting at the beginning of the process and lose 1 at the end, or half a day at the end, would be my understanding of it.
So I don't do a lot of public math because it never turns out well, but this bill net adds 1.5 more days of early voting and 2 more days of mail-in voting, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, thank God. Okay. All right. Committee, we still have opponents, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to opponent testimony. Thank you, conferees. The only opponent I have listed to speak in person is Ms. Melissa Styler. Welcome to the committee. I'll remind you, I'd like to keep it to 3 minutes so that we have time for questions.
Of course. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me again. My name is Melissa Styler. I'm the Advocacy Director with Loud Light Civic Action. I think I can be pretty quick because we opposed this in 2024 and in 2025 and now in 2026. So I don't need to repeat myself that much. Plus, I gave you all a visual aid. I know that calendaring and counting and stuff like that can be pretty rough. So I figured a visual aid might be helpful for really looking at this. A lot of the other conferees brought up things that I would have brought up, so I'll skip through things that are covered in my written. But some things I'll point out is that I would disagree with the premise that the voter registration deadline and when mail ballots get sent out need to be anchored to each other. And in fact, this isn't the case in other states. And so just to put that out from the get-go, we don't have to move the voter registration deadline. And that's our biggest kind of beef with this bill. The number one reason that young people, first-time voters, working-class people who are moving, and really, if you're looking at the EAC report, the number one reason that people show up to the polls and their vote doesn't count, they get turned away, is because of issues with voter registration. And think about how many people want to go and vote, but they realize that they missed the deadline already. So moving back the voter registration deadline is already like a non-negotiable from our perspective, representing young people across the state. I understand the issue with slow mail. I do think that there's a lot of opportunities that we could look at changing things to be able to address that, that doesn't put the burden on the citizen, but rather the government can look at more creative ways to get around this. The early voting at noon, you say 1.5 optional days are added, but this is one of the very few mandated early voting times. And that's something that, it's a very popular early voting time at that. And so that's something that's also a little eek to us. And so the thing is this has been offered as a compromise bill, and what we had said previously and maintained today is that the compromise is almost as bad as the underlying bill of removing the 3-day grace period itself. Like, this is 2 weeks of restrictions on voters the month before the election. Like that, on top of it, you could have changed the presidential preference primary deadline to match the other deadlines, but it is at the shortest possible window, the longest time that's required by federal law away from the election. So there's the 2 days of maybe mail ballots getting sent out, because this is not they have to be sent out. It is they could possibly start being sent out depending on what the county needs. That just isn't a very good compromise. And I'll close in just saying, I hope that we can look to other states to think a little bit more creatively about how we can.
Ma'am, your time's expired. Are there any questions for first of all, is there anybody else wishing to speak as an opponent? Okay, seeing none. Does anybody wish to ask any questions? Representative Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If it's okay, would you mind finishing your last sentence for me?
Oh, sure. Just looking at the other states and what they're doing, I mean, 20 states start sending out their mail ballots at least 45 days before the election. This is obviously not tied to the voter registration timeline. 22 states offer voter registration throughout early voting and election day. All of these are safe, secure elections. Also, they have security features that we can do this kind of thing. It's happening right now. We could look and see what's going on there. And I guess I'll close and say I understand the kind of bureaucratic messiness of some parts of managing a calendar, but nowhere in the Constitution does it say that the government has a right to bureaucratic convenience and that that right is greater than that of the citizens' right to vote. And so I do hope that you really look at creative ways that the government can deal with bureaucracy.
Okay.
It does not put that on.
We're not going to backdoor do 4 minutes testimony. So did you have a question, Mr. Ranking Minority Member? Okay, does anybody else have a question for the opponent? Okay, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you for having me.
All right, committee, I'm going to close the hearing on HB 2453. I don't have any other business. Is there anything for the good of the order? Okay, seeing nothing, we're adjourned.